So like Christian said, these are not my words, these are Kayla's, but I'm happy to present them for her. Okay. So when the U.S. is done pillaging countries, when the bloodshed seems to rest, after homes and lives have been destroyed, the death toll of millions of people does not stop, as the United States imperialism doesn't stop when the troops leave. What the ruling class would have you believe about climate change is that it is caused by the actions of all of us, and only us individually can do our part in combating it. What they won't let you know is how the U.S. is responsible for 75% of the world's total pollution, and what they don't want you to know is that 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions, and what they especially don't want you to know is that the profitability of war and violence is far more important than the lives of people and the life of the planet. From deaths by radiation in Japan to death caused by Agent Orange in Vietnam, the effects of the U.S.'s inhumane military strategies are felt today. The World Health Organization reported that for over a decade, 7 million Vietnamese people who were exposed to this toxic chemical known as Agent Orange, which is a dioxin that causes cancer and other deformities, First used to cripple the Vietnamese during the wartime, long after the Viet Cong ousted the imperialist predators, they are still being killed with the ruthlessness of the U.S. military. But this dioxin doesn't just kill people, it kills animals, it kills crops, and it is leading to increased starvation and a threat to the ecosystem. War is a business for the West. From the airstrikes by the Western imperialist powers in Syria just last weekend, the stock values of the top missile manufacturers have soared by $10 billion. But what are the environmental impacts of these airstrikes? Beyond the obvious of killing people and destroying communities, it goes further to destroy entire ecosystems, which has a long-lasting effect. This also has an impact on the extinction crisis. More animals in this period than ever since the extinction of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago are going extinct. Scientists predict that within the next mid-century, 30 to 50% of animals will go extinct, as reported by the Center for Biological Diversity. Yeah. It also reported that 99% of the cause for all these species going extinct is by human activity and especially climate change. As presented by Sarah Flounders, the U.S. Pentagon does not deny the threat of climate change at all. In fact, the Pentagon recognizes it as another significant challenge for the United States and the world at large. As greenhouse gas emissions increase, sea levels are rising, average global temperatures are increasing, and severe weather patterns are escalating. The impacts of climate change may increase the frequency, scale, and complexity of future missions, including defense support to civil authorities. The department's operational readiness hinges on unimpeded access to land, air, and sea training. But as you see, their perspective, the Pentagon's, around climate change is only as a threat to the U.S.'s imperialism and military ability, rather than reflecting on how the Pentagon is a huge factor in the destruction of the planet. Their perspective is climate change as a hindrance to their war business, and ironically enough, mentioning the rise of greenhouse gas emissions. Let's explore the Pentagon's role to that very point. For this, we can just look at the U.S.'s role in the war on Iraq. The $3 trillion used by the U.S. to pillage Iraq would have covered all of the global investments in renewable power generation. Right. And between 2003 and 2007, the war generated at least 141 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, more each year of the war than 139 of the world's countries release annually, as reported by the researchers at Oil Change Institute. The Air Force, as reported by H. Patricia Hines, uses more than 1,600 gallons of jet fuel per hour and peaks at 1,400,000 gallons per hour at supersonic speeds, while a quarter of the world's jet fuel feeds the USAF, United States Air Force fleet. In 2006, they consumed as much fuel as U.S. planes did during the Second World War, 1941 to 1945, an astounding 2.6 billion gallons. I ask you now to look up war impact on environment. If you find anything at all, usually it's climate change impact on war. It only talked about the DPRK's missiles into the ocean or the threat of nuclear war and paint oppressed nations as the aggressor. Hardly any studies concerning greenhouse emissions will research the United States military's effects because of something called the Kyoto Accords. In 1998, 192 countries signed an international treaty to cut back on the use of greenhouse gases from the threat of climate change. One of the 3 countries that swindled its way out of the treaty was, of course, the United States. So what can we do? Many of us do not have institutional power in this country. We can recycle all we want, but what needs to be done is to stop the U.S. war machine. We need to rise and revive the anti-war movement, close all 900 U.S. bases around the world, and put the planet and living beings back at the front of what it means to be a human being. The ruling class will not take us down with them for meaningless wealth. There is no point in having all the riches of the world with no planet to have it on. The world dies for arbitrary laws. And this is a plug for Kayla. They have a piece on climate change in regards to the meat industry. If you're interested in this topic, you can just go to this website right here. It's their blog, and it's their latest piece on Marxism and veganism. That's all. Thanks all.